Hello everybody, welcome to Time Out Tuesday. My name is Bianca Burwell and I'm an art teacher at Alliance Middle School. And what I'm going to be showing you how to do today is something called a Zentangle. They're really easy. They don't require a lot of materials. It's something that you should be able to do from home, but they're a really great way to help manage stress and to give you something to do while you may be stuck at home right now and make you feel a little bit creative. So let's go ahead and get started. So to make a Zentangle, you essentially need two things. You need something to draw on and you need something to draw with. And this can pretty much be anything you want. I'm going to be working on a gray sketch paper and I'm going to be drawing in markers so you're able to see. When we do Zentangles in class, I have my students do it in pencil first. That way they can erase mistakes and kind of refine as they go. But it's totally up to you what you use. You can use something like printer paper or newspaper, sketch paper, cardstock, anything that you can draw on. And then in terms of what it is that you're using to do the drawing itself, again, that's totally up to you. It can be pen, it can be marker, just something that you can get a nice line out of because you're going to be using patterns for this project. So the first thing that we're going to do with a Zentangle is we want to section off our paper, and there are a couple ways you can do this. The first way is taking a straight edge like a ruler and just laying it across the paper and kind of overlapping your lines. And what we want to do essentially is create new spaces because we're going to be filling those spaces with pattern later. So you can use a straight edge if you want. It is not necessary. If you want this to be a little bit more organic, then you can kind of like freehand what your lines look like. But if you notice, when I overlap my lines, I'm now creating these new spaces. And these new spaces are going to be where we put our patterns later. I would say that you don't want to go too overboard with this. It'll be a lot more challenging if you make these spaces smaller because what we're going to do is add a completely unique pattern in each of these areas. And if you have a lot of tiny spaces, that's a lot of tiny patterns you're going to have to add in later. But if you like that and you want to challenge yourself, then by all means, you can make tiny spaces to fill with more patterns. That's totally okay. There's not a wrong way to go about doing this sort of design. It's going to look however you want. But what we want to do is just make sure that we are breaking the page up into new small spaces. And that's kind of how we're going to map this out first. Okay, so once you find your stopping point, what you're going to do now is the actual Zentangle part. So Zentangles are called Zentangles because the word Zen, which means to feel at peace or to feel calm or relaxed, when we give our brain tedious small tasks to do or repetitive tasks to do, it tends to put our brain in a state of meditation, which is why Zentangles are often used in art therapy. They are a really great way to manage stress and kind of help to relax the brain. But what we're going to be doing is just adding completely different patterns in each of these new spaces that we've created. And you want to make sure that first that you're not repeating patterns, obviously, and that you are using patterns. So what constitutes a pattern is that you're taking an object or a design and you're repeating it over and over somehow. So anything can be a pattern as long as you repeat it. Patterns can be very complicated versus very simple. It's totally up to you. You can do a mix of both of those. But what you're going to start by doing is just filling in each section. I like to do my lines that I map with bold and then go in with something a little bit thinner so that way I get these really intricate designs in these spaces. So like this first space, I'm just going to start with something simple like a zigzag. And you just want to make sure that you're filling that space from edge to edge. The more line work you can incorporate, the better your Zentangles will turn out. You can also do like a bunch of things together. So instead of doing just kind of one shape or one type of line, you can do a combination of lines and shapes as long as you're repeating that pattern within your space. And I'll show you what I mean by that here in a second. So that's one section of my Zentangle done. Let's say in this section I want to do like triangles and then something else underneath of these triangles. So if I want to do like dots underneath of them, that's okay. I just want to make sure I go back to what I did originally so that way it does repeat. And again, these are pretty simple patterns. Zentangle patterns can get really, really intricate and almost like optical illusion-like. And you could Google Zentangle examples and see like all the different types of patterns that you could use. I often will provide my students with like a packet that has some examples to kind of like push them to challenge themselves to think outside of, just like polka dots and stripes, but and show them that they can really get a nice design if they take the time to add the line work in. So I'm going to go ahead and just keep working on this, and then I will show you guys what it looks like when it's done. So this is my finished Zentangle. Something to keep in mind also is that you could start off with a line drawing instead of drawing these sort of non-objective abstract shapes that I did, and then filling in your drawing with sections of pattern. That always looks really nice. Another thing you can do is leave some of the spaces empty and allow the negative space to come through, and that will give your Zentangle some dimension and depth. This is Banksy. She's helping me make my Zentangle. But go ahead and give it a try, and hopefully you guys have as much fun doing these as I do. I think that they're really, really relaxing, and they tend to put me in a state of calmness, and they kind of help me manage my stress, and my students love to do these too. So go ahead and give it a try, and make sure that you tag Last Letter Project on your design so we can see what you made.